Hello everyone, Visual Radio program number 362 on September 29th, 2006. Simon Kirke.
Hey Joe, nice to be here.
It's great to have you here, Simon.
Thank you. Lovely place you've got.
I love it here.
Yeah, it was an old church apparently. Very nice.
Your dad knows about Mrs. Eddy.
Yeah, Mary Baker Eddy. Yeah, she was Ginger Baker's mother, and she formed that popular group in the 60s called Christian Scientists.
Ah.
Yeah, they were very big in London for about a month. They promised a lot of things, but my dad never really got beyond the, the praying bit. He never got the financial rewards that Christian Science promised.
To those leaning on the sustaining infinite, today is big with blessings.
Yes, and after that we'll have the weather.
If you go into
and the traffic.
If you go into town in the Christian Science Center, they do have a beautiful maparium.
What area?
A maparium at the Christian Science Center.
A maparium.
A globe of the earth that you walk through.
Wow. Okay.
And it's acoustically perfect, so you have to whisper.
Oh, that's
it's really amazing. Yeah. So if you have some time in Boston, it is worth checking out. Stained glass globe that you walk through. The plank is at the equator.
Wow.
And it's like the size of this room, and you're walking through the earth.
I'd like to do an acoustic show there, perhaps. They could rent it out to me.
I think it'd be a perfect place for an acoustic show.
Okay.
You're doing an acoustic show tonight, September 29th.
Yeah.
Which brings you to Boston?
Let me go back a little bit. I'm in AA, and I know the head counsellor at this place called Right Turn, which is in Cambridge. And he was a drummer in a band called the Del Fuegos.
Oh, okay.
Who were Woody Geisman. And I've known him for several years, and he asked if I would do a show, to help with the finances, because they need every penny they can get. And it's primarily a rehab facility for musicians and artists. So I came up yesterday on the 28th, and I spoke at a meeting, and I'm playing there tonight. So hopefully we can raise some money for them.
I didn't realize they're on my MySpace. So I saw Right Turn on MySpace, and they're on my MySpace, but I never had an idea it was a rehab.
Yeah, it's a rehab facility. Everyone's on MySpace.
Right.
I'm threatening to go on MySpace, but my kids are saying, no, Dad, no.
Well, if you do it, you have to go on the music one. I didn't do that.
You're right.
And because when you do the music one, you can put up your clips.
Right, yeah. I might do that. I have my own website while we're here. www.simonkirke.com. So I have music clips and things on there, but MySpace is amazing. It can reach so much more.
It does, and it's fun.
And it's fun.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun. Speaking of fun, when I was maybe 15 years old and my sister's driving the car, and there was a DJ in Boston called John H. Garabedian, and he would play Honky Tonk Woman. And when Mick Jagger gets to the raunchy lines, right?
Yeah.
Divorcee in New York City. Let's move before they raise the parking rate. He spliced it, and we nearly drove off the road. It was the first time we heard it. He had just really had fun with the two songs, having the but also the little risque, and he matched it together.
Wow, that's interesting. Well, it's funny you should mention that, because I don't think many people realize that All Right Now, which was by Free, my first big band, was heavily influenced by Honky Tonk Woman. Honky Tonk Women, I beg your pardon. And I remember when I first heard that, with that funny cowbell, and then and it really was an amazing epiphany for me and Paul Kossoff. I was living with Paul Kossoff at the time. And I don't know if it wasn't a copy so much as a heavy influence, but about 6 months later, we had occasion to write All Right Now, and that kind of was kind of reminiscent of Honky Tonk Women, but we did have trouble with that line, raise the parking rate, because we had to go in front of the BBC with a 24-track tape and isolate that little bit of vocal.
So they knew it was parking rate.
And not, the other word. And when it had been cleared, we were allowed to go on Top of the Pops, which was the program.
Sure.
You get on Top of the Pops, you're guaranteed a top 40 hit. So it was a big a big moment for us. But that guy was there with a clipboard listening to, and we had to go like through the recording heads, raise the parking. So once
Because people in America thought it was the F word,
yeah, I know,
rent.
I know.
They thought it was rent. They didn't know it was rate. Here,
Yeah, well, parking rates. Yeah, I don't know. Paul Rogers was in another zone at the time. But
you know, what's the term? Lady Madrigal, is it? For the Madrigan, a Mondragreen. When misheard lyric.
I never knew that.
They're called Mondragreens.
Did you hear that? I never
Do
knew
a
that.
little Google on the Mondragreen, and yeah, and Free have a very famous Mondragreen.
Well, that's it. Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite little records. It explodes off the turntable, where Honky Tonk Woman is more laid back.
Yeah.
Free explode.
Yeah.
And that was, what a great.
It's a good groove. I mean, we had a ball making it. It was our first sort of dance record. I mean, Free at the time we were very serious, very blues based, and we went down very well wherever we played in England and Europe. You know, we went down well, but our songs had this sort of medium tempo, kind of heavy, almost to the point of ponderous, and we realized that we needed something a little bit with a bit more pizzazz. So they say necessity is the mother of invention, and it was necessary that we had a universal song, and All Right Now fitted the bill.
Let's go back a little before then. You were living with Paul Kossoff. What was the first band you were in over there?
The very first band, when I left school, it was called Mayton's Magic Mixture, and it was a 60s power trio built along the lines of Cream, with Clapton and Baker and Jack Bruce, and I had a double kit. There was a bass player and there was a guitarist, and it lasted for about maybe 6 minutes before I thought, this is not for me. I wanted to play the blues, and then I joined the Black Cat Bones, which had Paul Kossoff playing guitar, and we were in there for about 4 months, and then Paul said, look, I don't want to play 12-bar blues for the rest of my life. I want to do something a little bit more expansive. And he knew this singer, Paul Rogers, in a band called the Wildflowers across town in London. And he was unhappy with his band, so we got together and we all got on, and then we had to find a bass player, and then Andy Fraser, who was just being sacked from John Mayall's Blues Breakers at the tender age of 15. Yeah, I think he had to be in bed by 9:30 in the evening, so John said, we got to get rid of this guy, get someone a bit older.
That would do it. Now, on this show, Simon, we do a little thing called the demo that got the deal. Was there a demo that got the deal for free?
No, I think our calling card, as it was our live show. So we never really took much stock about recording stuff. And word of mouth got around that A, we were very young, B, we were very good. And that kind of intrigued record companies. And also we had our trump card was this guy called Alexis Corner, who was the sort of godfather of British blues. And he championed us, and he put the word out, you've got to check out this band. So no, we didn't have a recording, we didn't have a record that we could shop around. It was just us.
Quite a nice endorsement, Alexis Corner.
Yeah.
So in America it was A&M. Was it Island in Europe?
Yeah, it was. It was Island Records.
Chris Blackwell and...
Chris Blackwell, yes. And in fact, we were managed by this rather, he wasn't very good. We didn't get on well. A guy called Brian Morrison, who went on to become big in other realms of the entertainment business. But Chris Blackwell was the guy that we wanted to be with because he had Island Records. He had Traffic, Joe Cocker, and they were the two. They were a musician's label. They weren't like Parlophone or EMI or any of the other labels around at that time.
Millie Small to Bob Marley running the
Millie,
gamut.
He founded Island Records on Millie, My Boy Lollipop, and Bob Marley was waiting in the wings. So when we heard that Muff Winwood who was Stevie's brother, and he was the A&R person for Ireland. He came to see us at the Marquee, the fabulous Marquee in London, and we heard that he was coming to see us. We were all a little bit nervous, and I think if I remember, he met us backstage and said, you know, I'd like you to meet Chris Blackwell next week. So we all went up there, and we shook hands. Chris was this amazingly looking, good-looking guy. They called him the babyface killer. He had a great business reputation, but he was a very smooth talker, very handsome, a lot of charisma. And we sat there, you know, we kind of stood behind his desk while he sort of looked at us and said, well, you know, Muff tells me you're good, and that's good enough for me, and we're prepared to give you a 6-month contract, you know, see how you get on for 6 months, with an option for us to pick you up after 6 months and maybe extend it. We went, oh, lovely, lovely. And he said, there's only one problem. We don't like your name. Free is too nebulous a name. We want you to change it. And we thought, alarm bells, like, bring, bring. We said, yes. He said, we want you to be the Heavy Metal Kids. And we said, go away. And he said, no way, we're not going to be the Heavy Metal Kids. So he said, well, and it was like this Mexican standoff, you know. He said, well, I guess we don't have anything to talk about then. And we went, right, okay then, thank you, bye-bye. And we went out the door and went, oh, Jesus, what have we done? You know. But a few hours later, he called Andy Fraser and said, all right, let's stick with Free.
You won the Mexican standoff.
We did, yeah. But it was touch and go, Joe. It was touch and go.
Well, I like the name Free better than Heavy Metal Kids.
Well, yeah. Yeah. But, you know, you could see, even in those days, in the 60s, you know, there were bands like Clouds, Taste, Spooky Tooth. I mean, bands that these names are like, what? And Free, I mean, we had a lot of trouble for the first year because promoters were getting calls or people rolling up at the door saying, well, we're not going to pay to come in, it's free. And it was just, but I'm so glad we stuck to our guns. Yeah, it was good.
Free. We had a booking agent on the show who, the guy promised him the door and the guy didn't pay him. He literally took the door, took it to the hotel, and the guy said, okay, come back, bring the door. He got their money. They were up in Vermont.
I admire his moxie.
You promised us the door, we took the door. You didn't pay us money, we took the door.
I guess he worked at home base every now and again. That was his alias. God bless him.
They wanted to open for Free, but you guys weren't available at the night. I want to talk about the current stuff, but I love talking about some of my favorite bands growing up, Free and Bad Company. But you do have a new DVD out.
I have a DVD out. I teach. I live in New York City. I've lived there for several years now, and I teach drums.
Is it? Where did it go? We had it on
It's down here.
Oh, cool.
It's an instructional DVD, but it's one with a difference. And
What's it called?
it's called Lessons from a Legend. Not my choice of title. It was the people who were distributing it. It's all right. I mean, I stand by it. It's good.
Simon Kirke. Well, at least Simon Kirke is in big letters.
Yeah. And we've taken 5 Bad Company songs and All Right Now, and I've showed people how I play drums on each of those tracks.
Cool.
And we analyze, I play along with the track, we analyze the rhythm, and then I demonstrate the certain fills, the technique. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's not paradiddles and exercises and rudiments and all that boring stuff. This is how I played the drums on those tracks. So. And it just got released, so there it is. And you can get it on my website at the remarkable price of...
Oh, let's not talk about those such things.
No, we can't. That's an edit point. Forget I exist.
No, but go to the Simon Kirke website and have some fun cruising around.
Cruise around on my website, www.simonkirke.com.
And there's not only a DVD, but Free have a DVD coming out on Uni.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Years ago, I heard that the BBC, in their wisdom, had erased hundreds of hours of tapes from early bands in the late 60s and
Isn't that
70s.
horrifying?
Well, it's just to save on, you know.
Like the Beatles and the Stones.
Yeah.
Just
and,
little
and
bands.
then someone uncovered a cache of tapes that had escaped. And luckily enough, our tapes were in there. And we did 4 or 5 shows at the BBC. It was a big deal to get on the Beeb.
Oh, yeah.
No, because it was the only show in town, and it was nationwide, and
But they also had a strange thing. Never lived there, so did they have to play like half BBC programming and half?
something like that.
So you'd record and you'd get airplay
Yeah.
on the BBC time.
Yes. Yeah. It was a very antiquated way of running radio at the time, but it was government run, and so really you had to abide by their rules, you know. So, but John Peel came along, and he was this legendary DJ.
Sure.
And he was wonderful. He only died a few years ago, but he was instrumental in breaking a lot of, you know, bands that went on to become very well known. And he had heard about us, and you know, we had this age thing going. He said, "Oh, I can't believe this." He says, after we played, he said, "Well, imagine how they're going to play when they're really old men, like 18 or 19." You know, and anyway, it's a double CD plus a double DVD, or it might be just
Double.
1 CD and 2 DVDs. And the DVD is the Isle of Wight show, when we played at the Isle of Wight.
The Hendrix, the 1970.
Yeah, but the complete, you know, I think we did 9 songs at the Isle of Wight, whereas you only see in archival footage, you know, you only see us do All Right Now. So it's a complete Isle of Wight concert, plus interviews from the 3 surviving members and Paul Kossoff's brother, and then more live stuff that they've unearthed from Germany and Holland, and it's quite moving to see it, you know. And what a good little band we were, really. You know, if I'd forgotten.
And that Isle of Wight show, Jimi Hendrix, The Doors, Kaleidoscope.
I think Kaleidoscope were on, The Who. In fact, when we were waiting to go on the ferry to the Isle of Wight, Pete Townsend came up to our van, and he went like this, like rolled down the window, and we went, "Ooh, he's going to hit us." And he said, "That's a great bloody song you guys have got." He said, "Let's hope it goes to #1." Because I think we were 2 at that time. Mungo Jerry was just above us.
In the summertime.
In the summertime. And that made our day. I mean, for Pete Townsend to come up. And The Who at that time were just staggering.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was so good. Yeah. I mean, the original Who, in their heyday, they could knock any group, any band in the land, in the planet, they could knock them off stage.
Well, I saw them in that era where I saw Bad Company's first show in Boston, which is now the Wang Center.
Oh, all right.
But in the day, it was the Music Hall.
Ah, okay.
And The Who had to be 73.
Oh.
And they were mind-blowing. Keith Moon going crazy and Won't Get Fooled Again, like just had come
Stunning.
out. So it was, they could have sold out as many nights as they wanted, and it was jam-packed. It was quite an event. As was the first Bad Company show, which you told me, you know, we're all impatient. We're waiting for the band to come out. How come the band didn't come out?
Well, what happened was it was the final gig of our first tour, and we'd released Bad Co, the black and white album, what we call the black and white album. And we had no idea how it was doing, or we had a vague idea that it was in the top 10. But this was in the days before cell phones and computers, and
you're on tour.
And we're on tour, for God's sake. So the only communication we had was the occasional pigeon who came in and dropped a note into our dressing rooms. And just before we went on, you know, the tour manager came and said, "Right, guys, let's go." And you know, could hear the clapping and the foot stomping in the auditorium. And Peter Grant said, "Oh, you're not going on yet." And we went, "Whoa, what?" He said, "Well, you can wait a minute." He said, "They can wait." All right. So we were waiting. He said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I've got a surprise for you." And he says, "Boys, it's been a long tour and things have gone." We're going, "Come on, Peter, come on, let's go." He said, "No, no, 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 no. And I wanted to show you something, and it's in another room." I thought, "Oh, Christ." So we go to another room, which is next door to the
And you're
dressing room.
anxious to get on
We're anxious
stage.
because people are going like this, nah. And he says, "Nah," and he starts his speech again. We go, "Oh, Peter." He says, "Anyway," And under this sheet that was on a table, he lifted up this sheet, and there were 4 gold albums to commemorate the sale of $1 million worth of sales of the first album. And we stood there, and we were like, and he said, well, go on then, get on stage. And like, we ran on stage like startled deer and played one of the best shows of our lives.
You made me wait because you had to get your gold album.
Gold bloody album.
Your first gold album for Bad Company.
Wasn't that terrible?
Yep. God bless. That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
I remember that show. I mean, I was a big Mott the Hoople fan.
Oh, yeah, all right.
And so, you know, I loved Ready for Love. With
Yeah.
And I love Bad Company, but it's like, where's the... You guys took it out.
I know.
That great riff from Mott the Hoople when you guys did Ready for Love.
That one?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for
well,
bringing
you
it
got
back.
it back now. You
now
can't please
I'm
him,
happy.
son, you know?
What a great riff.
Yeah, that was Mick Ralph. Mick wrote some of the best Bad Company songs, and he wrote them by himself. I mean, he obviously wrote quite a few with Paul Rodgers, but Ready for Love, Moving On, Can't Get Enough. I mean, he ruled.
And Can't Get Enough is like the twist backwards. You know,
I never thought.
if you think about it, you know, it's the same chords, I think.
Thing, at that time, Mick Ralphs was having, rows with Ian Hunter, and Ian didn't like Can't Get Enough. I mean, Mick played him the old version, and he said, no, I don't want to do that. That's not going to be good. So that was the straw that broke the back for Mick. And then he played it to Paul, and he had this little, reel-to-reel tape. And Paul went, wow, man, that's great. And then he started saying, I take whatever I want. And suddenly he became this sort of blues rock. Doom, do, 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 do. And it was unusual because a lot of songs in those days were just... Doom, there was no... It's like a swing band almost. It was like a swing, like a marching... thing, and I think that was the appeal of Can't Get Enough. It had that nice lolloping swing to it. Anyway, Paul breathed new life into it, and it was one of the first songs we recorded. Can't Get Enough of Your Love. It was great.
Now, I just reviewed Ian Hunter and Mick Ralphs together. They did a DVD, Live at the Astoria.
Yeah.
And I guess what happened, because my friend Steve Hawley's the drummer.
Right, good drummer too.
A wonderful
good.
man.
Yeah.
But I guess there was really a misunderstanding because Mick didn't think that Ian liked his music, but Ian didn't think he could sing the blues like that. So,
well, I think he was right. He couldn't sing the blues like that. But
so there's where they...
Bit of miscommunication.
Right, because Ian wasn't saying, I don't like the tune. It was like, he didn't want to say, I can't sing in that style, I don't believe, you know. So they had that some kind of weird, and now they're back. And
I think at that time, Mick was blossoming into this very good lead guitarist. And, Mott were primarily known as this sort of colourful, glam, blues, fun-loving bunch, kind of eccentric. And I think Mick was just gradually getting ousted. He felt like he was being, squeezed out and wanted to go somewhere else. I don't think it was a personal thing with Ian. I think it was just, he was 20, he was quite a late bloomer, Mick. I mean, he's, in 1975, he was 20, in 74, he was 30. And really, that's kind of getting on to be, jumping ship from a well-known band. I mean, Mott the Hoople was a well-known band. And Bad Company had this cachet to it that it was a super group because it was free, Mott the Hoople.
Sure.
And Boz was from King Crimson. So I think Mick just, once he joined forces with Paul Rodgers, it was a marriage made in heaven for a few years because they both found sanctuary in each other's music.
But the interesting thing is that when you were on island and Mick Ralphs was on island, you were doing the blues-based pop.
Yeah.
Where Mott the Hoople I thought with Brain Capers, they were stretching the boundaries.
Yeah.
Death Will Be Your Santa Claus. They were doing weird stuff.
Oh,
that
weird
was
stuff indeed.
marvelous.
That was Guy Stevens. Guy Stevens was their producer, and he produced Free's first album. He was this maniac.
So Guy did the first Free album.
Yeah, Tons of Subs. And he was great. He just went in and said, listen, just do your live set. He put no constraints on us at all. We did a couple of, Paul had written a couple of songs that we sprinkled in. Trouble and I can't remember the other one. But in essence, Tons of Sobs was our live set. And he loved the band, but he kind of loved Mott the Hoople because he sort of lived vicariously through Mott the Hoople. He was this, you know, this madman, and Mott the Hoople were kind of more allied to him than to us. But Mick got tired of it, and he wanted to play serious rock and roll, and so we formed Bad Company together.
But there's a weird synchronicity there that Guy Stevens produced both you and Paul and Mick separately, and then Bad Companies comes together.
Yeah.
You guys produced yourselves, right, with the first Bad Company? No. Of course.
Well, we did. Yeah, yes and no. I mean, we were so confident, and for the first few albums, we wrote, you know, or rather, Paul and Mick wrote the bulk of the songs. I wrote a few, and we had the songs so down pat, and we knew how they should sound that we didn't really need a producer, which is, you know, it's a double-edged sword. Production is a double-edged sword. A good producer is a catalyst in a studio. He can help you, he can mold, but you know, it's like treading on a minefield. You know, you have to know when to rein back and when to push forward, and not to upset the artists, but not to be so sensitive that you don't know, or you're afraid to say what you think about a song. So it's a tough job. But for the first few albums, we just needed a good engineer, and we produced our own albums. And
once again, you didn't need a demo per se, because Swan Song had just developed. Led Zeppelin.
Well, yeah, Swan Song was Led Zeppelin's label, and they were, you know, the biggest thing in the world at that time, biggest band, and rightly so. I mean, they were. I know it sounds trite to say, but I saw The Song Remains the Same again, you know, a couple of years ago. The live album, and it was not one of their best gigs by their own account at the Madison Square Garden. And they were so good. Jesus, I've forgotten how good they were. Anyway, we hooked up with them. We wanted Peter Grant as our manager, and as luck would have it, Zeppelin had just formed this label, and they were looking for an opening act. You know, obviously they were going to be on their own album, their own label rather, but they were looking for another band, and we came along and they signed us. And the first album, the black and white album, was on Ireland in England, because we still had one. We were contracted. It was a little bit of a grey area. Me and Rogers were contracted to do one more album as single artists. So we gave them that. But the rest of the world was on Swan Song. And then after that, we were all on Swan Song. All the other albums were on Swan Song.
Ireland had a unique array of albums. Kossoff did I forget if you're on it or not, Kossoff and maybe Rabbit and a bunch of people.
Well, Kossoff, Kirke, Tetsu, Rabbit. And what happened when Free broke up for the first time, Paul went off to do his own thing with a band called Peace. Andy Fraser went off within a band called Toby. And me and Kossoff did this solo, not solo, but we did an album together with Rabbit, who now plays with The Who, and a bass player called Tetsu Yamauchi, who we'd met in Japan, and we flew over to England because we wanted him to be, you know, Andy had gone off by this time. He'd gone to LA, and, you know, we were looking for a bass player. But we ended up doing this album, which is pretty damn good. I mean, it was the first time I'd sung, and Rabbit sung a few tracks, and obviously, you know, we would have loved to have Paul Rogers singing it, but it wasn't to be. So it ended up being called Kossoff, Kirke, Tetsu, and Rabbit, and that was a good album.
I have all these albums in my basement, you understand.
Well, it's a collector's item. That
I wanted you to sign them.
KKTR.
I wanted you to sign them, but I was in such a rush today doing all these things. So, like, I have most of your records, and they're in the basement.
Well, I'll come back. We'll do it.
5,000 other ones.
Whoa, well, we'll do it.
It's tremendous honor being here with you because you really have been influential in you know, my musical experience growing up. And it is, you know, Bad Company were phenomenal on stage.
Yeah, well,
phenomenal.
We had our moments.
And
can I just go and get a water? Can we do that?
you can do that, and I can actually talk to everyone about visual radio because.
Oh, is this? Okay.
Yeah, unless actually, if there's anyone out there that can get a water for Mr. Simon Kirke, that'd be awesome.
Thanks, Mike.
You are a rock star, so
Well,
you know, you just have to ask. For the past 2 years, you've been doing singer-songwriter. People don't realize that you've been playing guitar as long as you've been playing drums.
I've been playing guitar. I'm 57, and I've been playing guitar for 43 years. That's
Amazing.
as long as I've been playing drums. Because when I was learning drums in my little house, the neighbors complained, and we had to go to court. And the judge said that I could only play drums half an hour at night. And
He gave you that.
He gave me that. And so I picked up guitar. And I've been playing guitar a long time.
And you played very well, just from the,
Thank you. Yeah.
the few lines. It's very...
Well, it's music is a lovely companion. Take it with you wherever you go.
And how is doing music in Britain and doing music in America? It's two different worlds, isn't it?
Mr. Mike. Thank you, sir.
No problem.
He runs the show, Mike. Yeah. Give him a round.
He's a good man.
Oh, lovely. Music in England and music in America?
You can go out and do your solo thing in England. You could do it here, and it's...
Well, you know, I played in both countries, and I have a different makeup for the set list is slightly different, England and between England and America. In England, I do a few more free songs.
Okay.
And over here, I do a few more Bad Company songs.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And I do my own. So there's maybe half a dozen free, half a dozen Bad Company, and then half a dozen of my own. So I mix it up so that everyone gets a good look in.
I don't know how you do it, Simon, because you go to California, then you go to London, then you go to New York and Boston. That's an awful lot of traveling.
Well, in the old days, I would have a job doing it, but I'm sober now. I've been sober quite some time, and you can do anything if you're sober. And all I need to do is, you know, sleep and have a nap and try and make up for the weird hours. But I can do it as long as I can stay sober. I'll be fine.
Do you perform in California when you go out there?
No, I'm actually, well, yes, I am going to California, and I'm playing with another guitarist, G.E. Smith, who was the Saturday Night Live band leader for many years, and he's a friend of Bill's, and those out there will know. And no, I don't mean Bill Clinton.
Yeah. But I do.
Yes, and we're doing a show out there with him, and then with his wife, Taylor Barton, the next day. It's at this film festival in Mill Valley.
Oh, film festival.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, indie film festival, and they love GE, and he invited me to go out there and play guitar on the first night, and on the second night I played drums.
Well, that's ambidextrous.
Yeah, I still love playing drums, don't get me wrong. You just can't take them to hotel rooms.
Right.
You know, you get a lot of... Mr. Kirke, we've had some complaints from the 8th floor below. Can you please shut the hell up?
But you're comfortable if they have a drum set and you like it, you can just...
Sure.
You're just happy to get behind them and...
I only need my own sticks.
Really?
That's the great thing, yeah.
And what are they?
They are ProMark Cs, American Hickory, Simon Kirke's signature model.
See, now, most people think a drumstick's a drumstick, but they're maybe like a baseball bat. They're all...
Well, I suppose, yeah, they are. There's different thicknesses, different weights, different lengths, different woods, different bells. You know, the bell end, the end can be plastic, it can be honed, it can be beveled, you know.
Most people don't realize
No,
it.
a stick is a stick, but it's not. And they actually making aluminium ones now, or as you say over here, aluminum. Aluminum sticks, which, please.
The Boston Herald yesterday had an article, the baseball bats of the Boston Red Sox. And it's like, they all use different bats.
Oh, yeah.
And so drummers have their own...
Yes, they do.
because it's your trade.
Well, if you have too big a stick, if you have like an A is the widest and, and an E is the slimmest. Whereas in brass sizes, it's the other way around, but that's another story. If it was too big to hold in your hand, your muscles would give out. I mean, they'd seize up if you had small hands. So you have to have the right girth to get the right grip.
Now, when a drummer plays guitar, do you do the Jimmy Page? Because he does the. Oh, I guess you don't. You don't play the guitar with your drumsticks.
No, but it's funny you should say that, Joe. In Kashmir, the Zeppelin, Bonzo, the drummer, for all you people who don't know, John Bonham, picked up one of Jimmy Page's guitars, and he doesn't know anything about guitar, and he had a drumstick, and he was going. And Jimmy went, "Whoa, what are you doing?" And he said, "I'm just playing." And Jimmy took that rhythm and it became Kashmir.
Amazing.
So it can happen.
Percussive guitar.
Percussive guitar.
You can perform for us a percussive or non-percussive guitar piece.
Well, I'll do a song. As I said, I'm in the program, and one of the songs that I wrote about it is called "It's a New Day," and it goes. Oh, my baby, my pretty baby, I need you every step of the way. It's been so long since I was strong. I'm gonna wake up, I'm gonna change my ways. There'll be no more lying. You can stop your crying over me, 'cause it's a new day, yeah. I've been wrong for so very long. I left you with tears rolling down your face. I was lost, didn't count the cost, no, no, no. I slammed the door and crawled into my deep, dark space. I'm tired of being tried and always crucified because of me. 'Cause it's a new day. Gonna throw back the blinds in the morning, letting the sunlight pour in. Open up, it's a new day dawning. Let my life begin. Well, it took some time, but I finally climbed out of that skin that had me on my knees. And the face in the mirror, you know the man I see is finally the one you knew I could always be.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Nice lyrics, good voice. If I was still A&R at New Rose, I'd say, Patrick, sign this guy up.
Yeah, well, you know, I've been writing songs for many, many years. And I've got a whole bunch, and I probably will make a CD one day. And when I was in rehab, I recorded 7 songs. It was suggested as part of my therapy, and that's, you can read about them on my website as well.
Oh, so you're right about that.
Yeah, you know, it doesn't have the stigma that it had in the old days. I mean, if you were an alcoholic or an addict, it was like, woo, you know, don't talk about it. Get it out in the open. I know I have.
So you're not anonymous.
Nope.
Well, that's good.
It's good. It protects the people who feel bad or who feel uncomfortable about it in the beginning. But most of the guys, I mean, I know probably half a dozen people in my industry who are overt, they're out in the open guys who go to meetings and they try and help other alcoholics, and it's just the way it is now. It's no big deal. If you're an alcoholic, it means you have an illness, you can't drink, and you're doing something about it. What's to be ashamed of?
I'm very respectful of people who do that. Friends of mine who are in programs have brought me before, but I needed a drink by the time I got out of there. I'm only being funny.
No,
I
that's
hardly drink, but
you're a lucky man. If it hasn't affected you, that's great.
you're either,
Yeah.
you know, I've seen so many of my friends that I just couldn't, you know, Jimmy Miller, who was A&R for
know.
Island.
A true talent, man.
Great producer, and we lost him, but there was, you know, the alcohol and the drugs, and some people recover and some we lose. And so that's why I'm respectful of it. And we tried bringing Jimmy, and he would write, we'd give him books. A recovered woman gave him a book, and he wrote on it, I don't believe in fiction.
Ooh.
So he really didn't want to know.
Yeah. The drag is that you got to let these people reach their rock bottom. And unfortunately, some of those rock bottoms can be tragedy. They can be death.
John Entwistle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he went out smiling.
Yeah.
But we won't dwell on that.
No, but I'm sorry to hear that King Crimson.
Boz Burrell died last week. And
I'm very, very sorry.
Yeah, thank you. He was I'm only starting to feel it now. I'm a little bit emotional about it because he was a gifted player. I mean, he didn't start playing until he was in his playing bass. He was primarily a singer in a band called the Boz People.
I never knew that. Wow.
The Boz People, and then he ends up playing bass for King Crimson, of all people, in the mid-'70s. And, you know, fans of King Crimson will know that they're not the easiest band in the world to play bass for. So he played with them for about a year, and then he left, and we found him. And he was Bad Company's original bass player and stayed with us for 7 years.
And when people said it was a supergroup, they don't understand. It really was a supergroup of these amazing talents coming together. King Crimson, who would have thought King Crimson Free and Mott the Hoople?
Yeah, I know. It's a strange mixture.
You don't see it on paper.
Well, I think that the thing about Bad Company was that we came from very well-known groups, so we had a high standard straight away. But we could deliver. We lived up to that tag. And we, in the case of in the case of Free and Mott the Hoople, we had come from bands that we just couldn't wait to get out of. You know, we were like these greyhounds that had left the starting gate. Once that rabbit came around, we were like, and when we hooked up with Mick, it was such a relief to find a guitarist who could play. He didn't pass out every time he picked up a guitar, and Boz was a great player, and he was a good singer, and it was for the first, I say this many times, Bad Company for the first 4 years was a joy. It was a real joy. I mean, we had a ball. We went all over the world. We made a ton of money, and we made some damn good music. So.
And you had a front man who, who could fill Freddie Mercury's shoes? No one, really, except for maybe.
I was kind of surprised when I heard about, well, I was shocked when I heard of Paul had teamed up with Queen. But then, you know, I went to see them, and it's like someone said to me, he said, it doesn't matter. This is a new generation now, and although they left out a lot of the operatic Queen repertoire, you know, Paul managed to acquit himself very well with Brian. I mean, Brian May is a wonderful guitar.
Sure.
Wonderful. And I would play with him at the drop of a hat. He was great. And it was a good show. I was just kind of, it was hard for me to detach, you know, myself from Paul. And it worked on a level, on one level, but it didn't work on another for me. But hey, I'm just glad he was out there singing. He's got a great voice.
Now, I'm supposed to know these things, and I don't, forgive me, but I did see Bad Company with Mick Ralphs and with another singer.
Brian Howe.
Up in northern Massachusetts. Were you in the band?
Yeah, I've been in every configuration.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you people did a gold album, right? It was a gold album without Paul Rodgers.
We actually had one huge album called Holy Water.
Yes, yes.
And it sold nearly 2 million copies, and today that would be astronomical.
Yes.
On the strength of a hit song called If You Needed Somebody. It was a period in my life which I wasn't very happy with, looking back. We had a new singer called Brian Howe. He was new at the time. He was being groomed by Mick Ralphs for Foreigner. To replace Lou Gramm, and then that didn't happen, and Mick called me and said, look, I know a great singer, la la la, if you want to go on without Paul, because Paul had gone off, he wasn't coming back. And we had Brian in, and Brian was very good for a couple of years. He was a bit different, and we thought we could mold him into more of a blues singer. But then it all started to go a little bit pear-shaped, as we say in England.
But it was fun.
It was fun for a couple of years, and it became a nightmare.
It was fun from the audience perspective,
Yeah, we made
too,
some,
I'm telling you.
You know, Bad Company took a different musical direction. A couple of the songs were a bit iffy, but in general, we still went out, we still played. It upset a lot of the die-hard fans because it wasn't Paul Rodgers, to the degree that maybe Freddie Mercury fans would say, oh, it's not Queen. Well, it's not, but it's still music.
And you sold so many copies, it registered with someone.
Shit, yeah, we did.
And
there was no denying that.
you know, I hate when the questions evaporate. I had a really good question too, but yeah, I have it now. You might not know this, but at the time, Atlantic put out one or two other groups that sounded like Bad Company while Holy Water was hitting. And one was the Joneses, a Boston area band.
Oh.
And they had had success. One was the guitar player from Willie Alexander and the Boom Boom Band. They were on MCA, and there was Finnerty who had the hit Let's Live Together. And they put them together as the Joneses. Now, they were a great band on their own, but Atlantic made them sound like Bad Company. And why are you making a band sound like what they're not when you have Bad Company? So there were two albums out there sounding similar, and yours one, of course.
Well, I think, you know, the record companies like a particular formula. I mean, if you were to go way back into the time of the Jefferson Airplane, the Doors, quite a lot of those bands, you know, Moby Grape, they kind of sounded similar. It was the same lineup. It was the same background for these bands, and I think Bad Company had such a distinctive sound. Two chunky guitars, solid drums, and a bluesy singer. It wasn't hard on paper to duplicate, you know. And I think Foreigner were closely influenced by us. I wouldn't say they copied us because they had their own style, but there was a certain genre of music in the mid to late 70s, that sounded a lot like us. And hey,
It's true.
It's true. I'm not worried about it at all.
Now, Mick Ralphs played with Ian Hunter and did Live at Astoria, which is wonderful, a wonderful, wonderful DVD. Do you stay in touch with Mick?
Well, I do. Oddly enough, our old tour manager died a couple of months ago of a heart attack, and it was the last time I spoke to Boz, because Boz was the man who called me and told me about Clive Coulson. And we sent flowers and commiserations. He lives in New Zealand. He lived in New Zealand, so we couldn't go to the funeral. Boz died last week, and I've emailed Mick a couple of times. So I'm going over to Scotland, and probably by the time this airs, you know, Boz will be no more. He'll be a bunch of ashes in the firmament. And I'm planning to meet up with Mick there. So I keep in touch with Mick because I adore him.
Yeah.
He's so funny, and he's a lovely guy, and he's still a great player. And we were friends then, and we will always be friends, you know.
Will there ever be collaborations, you think, in the future?
I don't know. I don't know. Paul Rodgers is kind of off in his own world. And also the other thing, Joe, it's kind of hard for me to play with people who aren't sober. And I don't mean who drink, but who drink to excess. And I'm not casting aspersions on anyone, but when we did the reunion tour in '99, it was hard to work with Boz and Mick to a lesser degree, but Boz was still pretty much out there. So I have to be careful who I play with.
You do, because it's
I don't want to get back in there again, you know.
No, and just from hearing that one song, man, I can't wait for the Simon Kirke solo CD.
Oh, thank you. Well, you can get this, my solo CD, you just go to my website. It's
so you have
Seven
one.
Rays of Hope. It's 7 songs that I wrote in rehab called 7 Rays of Hope.
Oh,
and it's funny because when I went to the pressing plant and he said, "What's the name of the CD?" And I went, "Oh, shoot." I mean, I had no title for it, and bam, it came to me. 7 Rays of Hope, and you know, maybe him up there.
So even though you've done the Kossoff Kirke
Tetsu Rabbit.
I almost did it in reverse.
Yeah.
And this is the first solo, really?
Ever.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've got a whole bunch of songs, and I do plan to make my own.
We wanted to record you live tonight, but that's a no-no, and I understand
Apparently,
that.
yeah, that's okay. Well, a lot
okay.
of people don't want to be seen in a rehab unit.
But I hope you bring an MP3 player or something to record some of these.
Yeah, well, I've got I did a couple of shows in Scotland only a few weeks ago, and that was recorded, and we're going to put something out on the website.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah.
And what do you think of this whole phenomenon of purevolume.com and myspace.com and youtube.com?
Oh, it's lovely. I think it's great. I mean, it's. I think the only thing about MySpace is, you know, you gotta have to watch out for predators. You know, a lot of guys out there who say they're 16-year-old and you want to get together, and they're not. So, being a father of 4 kids myself, I think, you know, I have to be careful. It has to be monitored. But the flip side is, it gives all these people a chance to play stuff and talk to each other, and I think it's a marvelous thing, you know.
It is a bit overwhelming, and for obsessive collectors like myself, YouTube is mind-boggling. You put the Beatles in, and you get more Beatles video than you thought they ever even made.
I know. Well, there's actually a very rare footage of me playing drums with Led Zeppelin in Munich. It was the only time another musician played with Zeppelin in Munich. It was their final show, and I was on the road with them. I had nothing else to do, and Bonzo invited me over. And then at the one gig, he said, "Hey, would you like to play drums on the last song?" Which was A Whole Lot of Love, of course. And I said, yes, little knowing what I was getting myself into. And yeah, I mean, I have a cassette of it at home, but someone emailed me a clip of me playing. It's like maybe 2 minutes of A Whole Lot of Love with Led Zeppelin.
Now, is Bonzo playing on it too?
Oh, yeah. We had
the two of you.
At the end of their set, Robert Plant said, "Oh, we're going to bring on a good friend of ours now, la, la," and the Roadies are putting up another kit as he's making this intro. And then I walk on and we do da 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 da.
Darn it!
Yeah,
When Peter Grant called my house, I should have told him to put that out.
he should have. It's on YouTube, and you can. I mean, it's not very well shot, but you can get a gist of what it's like.
Your manager called my house once because his daughter was dating someone I was managing.
Right.
But
I know.
the interesting thing is Peter took a real liking to Bad Company. He was actually hands-on.
Yeah, yeah.
That's pretty phenomenal.
He was a lovely man. I mean, he had a dark side to him, but he was, when he was in your corner, he was the best ally you could ever had, and you could ever have, rather. And he was great. I mean,
Did he go to a lot of the shows?
Oh,
At the beginning?
Well, with Zeppelin, he went every single one. At the beginning of us, he came to a lot of our shows, but at the same time, Zeppelin were, you know, touring as well. So he spent more time with them than with us. But that was okay. We didn't really need him. We had a very good production manager, we had a very good tour manager. And so G, as we would call him, he used to come out every now and again, but we always... G, yeah, G. 300 pounds of mean.
Gravity, G.
Yeah, he was quite a guy. Yeah.
Legend. You've had such an amazing life with all this great music that you've given to the world. And I think it's fun that you're now actually going front and center and doing this. It takes a lot to get from behind the drums. And
well, it didn't. It was kind of. It came out of a situation with Brian Howe. I really wanted to do Shooting Star in the lineup because it was such a favourite of the fans. And he said, "Oh, I don't want to do that song." So I can't see what it is.
That was a signal for me.
Oh,
but we make it part of the show anyway.
Oh, well, 5 minutes?
4 minutes.
Oh, 4. And Brian Howe refused to do Shooting Star. So one of the roadies came up to me one night and says, "Here, I've heard you playing guitar in sound checks. Why don't you do it?" I said, "Get out." He said, "No, go on." So you know what? I did it at a sound check when Brian wasn't around. And
playing
the whole
guitar
road
and
crew,
singing?
yeah, and all the road crew. You try to get a road crew to applause, and they all went nuts. The road crew. So I very tentatively and very nervously did it in a gig in Pennsylvania, and I told Brian, I said, "Take a hike for 5 minutes," because we weren't getting on. He said,
It's your band.
Well, it was. I outranked him.
That's certainly
And I did it,
true.
and 5,000 people went crazy. And I did Shooting Star every night for the rest of that tour.
Good for
And
you.
I made my point.
Because, you know, Ian Hunter said it, when you have the hits, you got to play the hits for the fans. He said he saw Procol Harum, and when they didn't do Whiter Shade of Pale, he knew he had to do All the Young Dudes for the rest of his life.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, why not? They're good songs, man, and they deserve it. Those fans deserve it. You can always do other songs as well, but you've got to do the hits as well.
SimonKirke.com is the website, and you'll probably be on MySpace at some point in time.
Well, I have. I've got my own space, but I can't figure out how to put my music on.
Okay.
So, you know, be patient. I do have a MySpace.
And the YouTube will have you with Led Zeppelin.
Yep, that's on there. I've seen it.
Whole lot of love. So can you put in Simon Kirke Led Zeppelin?
I think Led Zeppelin / Simon Kirke.
Very nice. There are Bad Company cuts and such up there?
Yeah, there's quite a few.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
And you're touring solo now.
Well, I'm doing the occasional gig. I'm not touring as such. I'm teaching in my studio. I live in New York, and I got the DVD thing going. I'm also shooting a pilot for a musicians one-on-one with other musicians for VH1. I want to interview Dickie Betts is the first one.
Nice.
Tommy Shaw, Jack Bruce. So I'm going to have my own TV show, and but I still want to perform. I love performing, and I love playing drums, so I'm available.
Well, Simon, what you didn't know is this is your VH1 screen test, and you've passed the audition, so you're very good on TV.
Thank you, Joe.
You're a great musician. I've loved your music my entire life.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for being on Visual Radio.
Thanks for having me. Huh?
Okay.
God bless.
And everyone, you know, another great addition. We got to thank Mike out there, Tiny, and
Mike.
the whole CAT crew here in Winthrop. And Mrs. Eddie, thank you for blessing the show.
Mary Baker, thanks for ginger.
Yes.